Hey, Don Williams here with today's episode of the Proven Entrepreneur Show. I got a real treat for you. I got somebody who's had a Kentucky Derby winner, had a Triple Crown winner, and is maybe the most accurate predictor of horse race winners on the planet. Jeff Seder with Equine, tell me again, Equine Biometrics. Okay. Welcome to the show. How are you, Jeff?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me, Don.
It's my pleasure. You know, the purpose of this show is for entrepreneurs to hear real stories from other entrepreneurs' lives and to learn. And so I'm thrilled to share your story today. And I'm going to start off with kind of a funny question. I think amongst other means, I think you predicted a Kentucky Derby winner using horse poop and math. Can you
Well,
tell us what you did?
we've not only predicted Kentucky Derby winners, we've had Kentucky Derby winners. We've had two that were second. We've been in the Kentucky Derby almost every year with something we bought at an auction for below the averages that are at auctions, not $1 million purchases. In fact, $155,000 average. And we've had three world champions. We've had the first Triple Crown winner in 37 years, and it's all documented and verifiable on it from independent third-party sources. And you can see the details of it, when we bought them, how much, and for who, and all that stuff on our website, EQB.fyi, not .com, it's .fyi. But I think that the rumor about the horse poop is because at one point when we were looking at every conceivable piece of data about horse racing, we did in fact measure the weight of horse poops on the way to the paddock. You know, they fight over a pound or two for the jockey, but then the horse may poop 15 pounds walking to the paddock. So we thought that might be interesting. But we have over 40 years collected massive data banks of all kinds, and we're data analytics. We predate the Moneyball, and I'm an entrepreneur, so I should be on your program.
An entrepreneur. That's
the horses.
That's classic.
With no money and no credentials and no nothing. That was 20 years of starving to death. And then I tell people it was easy. It only took 30 years and several $1 million of private research to be an overnight success.
Yeah, that's kind of how those overnights.
I'm still notorious in the industry. I mean, a lot of them hate me. The entire industry, the value of these big farms and everything, the most important variable to them is the pedigree and value and breeding is where you make your money and stuff. And I just threw all that out the window. So I'm a total disruptor. I piss these people off. I started with the United States Olympic Sports Medicine Committee way back when they just started in the 70s. And we didn't have the parents at the tryouts. And we do DNA and we do all kinds of stuff. But pedigree, which is the thing that values these horses, and the whole industry is built around, we're the disruptor and the threat to that. You can take your multi-million-dollar mare to a multi-million-dollar stud fee, and your chances of getting a really good horse are maybe 1%, 5% occasionally.
Ouch.
We don't do that. And our numbers are 5, 6, 10 times that, what we do, without pedigree. We use pedigree to determine how much to pay for a horse and how much it's going to be worth in the market. That's it. So we are the bad boys. And analytics in horse racing is not popular because it's going to completely disrupt the industry.
Yeah, I love that. So tell me, if your average investment into a horse is $155,000 and you've been wildly successful at the Derby, what's the average investment into a horse on the field?
Well, they go from $40,000 to $3-4 million before they were ever raced, when they were babies. The average at the auctions where they're buying the kind of horses we buy is $300,000-400,000 for the real good ones. But we get hopefully the hidden value ones. We did, for example, for one of our major clients, he invested $40 million over 4 years. And at the end of 6 years, he had back $64 million. He was number one stable in the United States, and he had the first Triple Crown winner in 37 years. We were on the front page center of the New York Times the day before the Triple Crown. It was, I think, June something on 2015. If you want to go back through New York Times, and there's a picture of me inside in the article. So
that's amazing.
Front page center. In fact, I don't know if you know the New York Times, but every day they have a quote of the day, and the quote of the day that day was what I had told him when he put the horse in a yearling auction, and it was, "Sell your house, don't sell this horse."
I
And
love that.
he bought it back for 300,000, and then ended up being worth 50 million.
Yeah, that was a good day.
That was a good day, but it
That
was
was
almost
a
a bad day.
that was a good
Because
day.
if he had sold it, everybody else would take credit for it, of course,
Yeah.
as well as he would have not gotten the money. He had other problems in business and foreign stuff and this and that, but not from us.
Yeah. Well, and that's the entrepreneur's what
He was a smart, decent guy. He was something else.
many entrepreneurs, if you look at 90% of their career, they're failing. It's a big win here or there.
Oh yeah, I started it. Well, I had to do outside projects. I have 3 degrees from Harvard, including law and business. My dad was not happy when I went with horses, but
I bet he wasn't.
I went for. I was 26. I went for a blind date at a riding stable to ride rental horses with a girl, and instead of falling in love with the girl, I fell in love with the horses, and I became obsessed. And then when I graduated, I was looking around for something to do with horses, and I found the U.S. Olympic Committee was just starting their scientific stuff because the East Germans were killing everybody with theirs, and I saw what could be done, and nothing was. The horses were the same as 300 years: eyeball, intuition, pedigree, and bullshit. So I knew there was something for me there. Although when we found out that the data on elite athletes was so different. It was different than normal, as injured or sick is from normal. So you couldn't help it all until you got the data. So one of the things we were doing back then was building databases on elite athletes, see how they're different, and they are different. And to do that on horses, I found the equipment didn't even exist to
Uh,
get that data on horses. I had to invent it. I had to go to black box suppliers of the defense industry. And near Washington, D.C., I had to hire engineers from MIT and doctors from Harvard and biomechanists from the major universities and veterinarians from the University of Pennsylvania. And I had to pay for all that. So I was doing leverage buyouts. And I made a lot of money, and it all went into research. I used to call it barn burgers because but that was what we could afford to eat. And we had a lot of detractors. I got to tell you how I got my first break. My first break, I was making presentations to some of the major stables. And I went to a guy who's a super entrepreneur named Ken Ramsey in Kentucky. He's been very successful. And he had 200 mares. And I went to him and I made this big presentation. And he sat back and he said, well, make one recommendation. Let's see what we get. I said, no, that's not how it works. You have to do this. He says, no, make one recommendation. You can do anything you want on all my horses and tell me, make one recommendation. So I went into the farm and I spent a week and I came back and I said, I want you to take this horse and enter it in the Belmont Stakes 3 weeks from now. And he burst out laughing. He said, it's a maiden. It's never won a race. He had a new stallion he was trying to promote named Cadiensis, and it was from the first crop, and it was named after his grandson, Nolan's cat. Nolan was the grandson. And he said, I said, no, you don't understand. What's going on in all these dirt races, especially the Kentucky Derby, where none of them have run that far before, is they're all slowing down. The guy who looks like he's passing everybody at the end, he's slowing down less than the others. It's like dogs. It's a logarithm. Hold on a second.
Go ahead.
Learn that in the Olympic Committee with the swimmers. So they could take a 25-year-old young guy and watch how he slowed down in a repetitive athletic motion and fit it to a curve and then extrapolate it out to see how he'd be competitive at 100 yards a year or two later. And it works. So I was doing it on horses. And this horse, he was not fast, but he did not slow down. And so his time for the Belmont Stakes, the longest race of the Triple Crown, 1.5 miles, was going to be good. Even though at 3/4, they'd only run him in sprints and he wasn't competitive because he couldn't run that fast. So he said, okay, I'll do it. He paid the money. I don't know, it was like $200,000 to get it into race late. And then his trainer was pissed. His trainer's a top, in the world trainer, and he didn't want to do it. And the day before the race, in a daily racing form, they had like, this horse is this good, and this horse, blah, blah, blah. And then there's the idiots and the silly ones, and they mentioned us, of course. I never got an apology. And then, so when I get there, the trainer's telling the press he had nothing to do with it. It's a command performance. So I'm up there, I'm in the stands, right, with them all. And they start out, and of course, he leaves the gate, and he's dead last, and he's trailing the field. And I'm thinking, I got to hide under the table, right? And I'm thinking, oh, God, please, this is my chance. And so about halfway through the race, he starts catching up. They're really just slowing down. And then about 3/4 of the way, he's just right in the back of the fat pack, right? And he starts passing people. And at the end, he was definitely going to win if he had another 3 or 4 strides. So he was third in one of the most prestigious classic races in the world out of the first crop of this new sire. So instead of a maiden that was worthless, he had something special. And to prove it wasn't a fluke, he then went to the Louisiana Super Derby for $1 million race and did it again. And that I got a client. So I actually started earning some money.
Yeah.
And then based on some of my performance there, I got this other guy, the Egyptian guy, who we took right to the Triple Crown in the World Championships. A lot of people still say, well, he has theories. And I'm thinking, they don't understand the stuff that sells in the racehorse business on pedigree. They have statistical this and that. That's all absolutely silly. But, it's like there's guys selling stuff on the pedigree based on for 2,000 years, they've been studying statistics as a science, so that there's a large database and there's patterns here and there. It'll tell you whether they mean anything, right? But they sell every pattern as, oh, look, this horse had a blah, blah, blah. This match had a good horse. It doesn't mean anything. And the horses aren't fruit flies. They have like one foal, and it's almost never by the same combination of the same sire on the same mare. And the data bank over the years is so corrupted by the big trainers and the drugs and the different businesses and blah, blah, blah. It would be like trying to predict boxing by having huge databases of the height of the socks and the type of underwear they wore. And then using that with AI to be sophisticated analytics is ridiculous. But it's right now the state of the art in horse racing. That's what they do, and it's not what I do. So, and now we're in year 10 of the DNA stuff. And we're way ahead there. And once again, the general stuff has been, the way they've approached it is not scientific. I was pre-med at Harvard to begin with, and I was magna cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa. So while I'm not, I'm kind of a jack of all trades, I hire the best people, but I'm not a dummy about that stuff myself.
Hey, and that's a secret, listeners. I hire the best people. Local billionaire here in town, oil and gas business. 2 things I learned from him. 1, hire the best people on the planet, not just in your area, the best people on the planet.
They are different.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
And that's the second thought. Somebody asked him in front of me, they said, well, how much do I pay him? When do I know it's too much? And he said, with the best people on the planet, you can't really pay them too much. They will demand to give you a return.
Yeah, the difference is the difference between chicken shit and chicken salad.
There you go.
Between elite athletes and the normal. It's different.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. You've been called, affectionately and probably not, the Moneyball of horse racing. What's the wildest point you've used in calculating odds? And it might have been horse poop, but is there something more wild than that you've analyzed?
Well, I think that one of the secrets is people are always looking for the magic bullet. The truth is, the best horses are not one with the greatest stride or the biggest heart or the biggest something. Everything's good. They don't have a hole in them. They may not have the best of anything, but they don't have a poor anything. So it's really a combination. So one of the things I discovered was I have 48 variables. So I map all the data into a virtual 48-dimensional space with all those variables to found, the clusters. It's called multivariate discriminant analysis, and it comes out with a prediction that's expressed as a percentage likelihood of that you're going to get what you're looking for. And of course, if you put in shit data, you don't get anything, right? If you put in the side of the socks for the boxers, you got to know. I published studies and refereed the leading scientific journals, refereed on my data on some of the stuff on the horses. And my studies were not 12 ponies in a lab. They were 12,000 racehorses at major racetracks over 10 years with every thing of every second of their racing records. I published a couple of papers like that. You can download from my website and see what they are. And we got a lot more than that. So I think that what's the wildest thing about us is that we're not one thing. We're AI in the sense of actual intelligence. We had the patience and the money And we invented the machine. I invented the first portable ultrasound machine so I could go into a stall and do a cardiac analysis of horses. And the way they were doing it, their protocol didn't work reproducibly. So I invented a new one, a different transducer. Went on the other side of the horse, a different transducer with different power. And now everybody uses it. I should have patented that. I did patent some things. I mean, so I think that I call it AI actual intelligence. So we've got the data nobody else has. We built the machines to get the data that nobody else has. And then we had the patience and the money and the time and the experts to use it in a way that almost never, ever gets used anywhere. 48-dimensional graph for real. And this was with shitty computer power. I had a textile company that I owned, marketing, and I had a room full of computers to do this back then. And I had to go over like telephone modems from racetracks in Florida. I rented a whole floor in a hotel next to the racetrack. And I had the cables going all over through the halls to the different rooms with the modems and the PCs. We built a bone scanner out of an Apple IIc. Actually, it wasn't even an Apple. It was the knockoff. I forget what they were called. And we modified that to do the first ultrasound stuff and bone scanning. We got patents. The bone scanner won the new medical device of the year in 1986 in Europe as a non-invasive bone scanner because it wasn't. I won't go into all the science of it, but it did, and it came out of our lousy little falling down farmhouse in a cornfield with a couple of guys from Harvard and MIT who were ne'er-do-wells, who were earning nothing.
Yeah.
And weren't doing what they were supposed to do because their parents were pissed.
Okay, so let me ask a question. What's one truth you've learned about winning in racing and in business that most people just miss? They just completely miss it.
Boy, that's a hard one. I think what it is you have to always ask why. When anybody tells you things, especially if you're trying to innovate or understand, how do you know is the key question. And then don't just take it, go research it. And half the time it's a crappy study somewhere. And there's a whole mountain built on this teeny weeny, base of sand. And you have to go back there and find out what the truth is. When I started, they were made fun of me about the gait analysis, the quadruped locomotion shit. So one of the first papers I published showed that all the textbooks, all the stuff, all the veterinary expert, everything, they had the gait wrong for a racehorse. Why? Because it was all done on ponies and horses and labs and that shit. They didn't even know what the gait of it was a racehorse. And so I published it, so they couldn't say, with experts there, and I had the right equipment, I had the right everything, the right people, and it was like on 10,000 horses over, I don't know how many years. So it wasn't something you could just dismiss. And so it was like in your face. You think I don't know, I don't have the expertise to do this? You don't even know what the gait is of a real racehorse when he's going flat out on the racetrack, which, by the way, for something like Secretariat, he's airborne 3 times. 3 times he's not bearing any weight on any leg within each stride. He's flying.
Wow.
And that's one of the reasons why the really good racehorses break their legs, because instead of loading one leg gradually off another one, they're coming down from outer space on each leg.
The impact.
And when they didn't know the impact, I had to bury force plates in the track at Delaware Park, and then have special cameras. We had film. Video wasn't available except for hundreds of thousands of dollars. 500 pictures a second, coordinated the force plate in the racetrack, transducers on the hooves of the horses, and we discovered things about what they're doing and why so many get hurt. Our horses don't get hurt. We haven't had a single breakdown. They're all the industry. It's a big thing. We had to ban racing because horses break down. They do the tracks wrong. They do the rest of it wrong. They buy horses that we know are going to get hurt. We've got the techs, and we keep them. Our horses just don't break down. They're racing when they're 6 and 7. The others are all too injured to run after. They're 3 or 4. So the resistance to what we do has been huge, and it used to drive me crazy. But I finally decided that's my advantage. They're giving me a free pass. Yeah. Why complain? So after I die, then they'll probably all jump all over all of it.
Well, just like an artist, it's more valuable after they're gone.
They invented the first heart rate meter that was accurate on horses for like interval training and this stuff. They were using heart rate meters that weren't giving them the right information. The temperature was too cold, it was too hot, it was wrong. They were using human meters. horses have an inverted T wave in their QRST complex, and there were all kinds of reasons why they got the wrong numbers. So we had to invent one that was actually accurate. And then the only people who bought it were the research universities or the vet schools, and we couldn't sell them to the trainers. And finally, somebody stole one at a racetrack, and we had a party. Somebody wants it. But it went into all our data, it was a big deal. So,
Share something with us that you've learned about leadership from analyzing multi-million-dollar horses that every CEO should know for their business.
wow. I think it goes back. Well, of course, there's always variables that you can't figure out or you don't know are important or you can't measure, like whether they're trying or not. I'll get into that later. I think
To me, just your stick-to-itiveness, your persistence of 20 years as a pariah in the industry. Nobody liked you. Nobody liked what you were doing. Just the fact that you stuck to it, you believed in it, you had a mission, you weren't going to quit.
I'm called Dogzilla in the betting world because I help some of the big whale bettors with their handicapping stuff because of the data I have on horses. Is this horse going to go the distance? That kind of thing. What was the last question you asked me, though? Because I had an answer for it.
Is it leadership?
I tell them about leadership. I think it goes back to what I first learned working with the Olympic Sports Medicine Committee, that the elite performers are different. And the more you understand that what their differences are, the more you're going to succeed because you're going to go after that. I staffed some of my companies for success. So I took bankrupt companies, turned around and sold them for a lot of money. And one of the things I did was I found young people that were ambitious, were smart, hardworking, not just wannabes. And I never went by traditional credentials. I always had to meet them and talk to them. And I just went after like I was doing with the athletes. I was going after people with something special. And if they had something that wasn't special, that was a pain in the ass, I put up with it. It was worth it. So I had a group of, I guess, misfits. I mean, somebody would call them that. We had a crazy bunch. I had a big picture of a Chinese character that's for chaos framed and put up in my office. And there was all kinds of shenanigans and fucked up stuff, but I didn't care about that. I mean, I don't care.
Yeah.
I think people worry too much about what it looks like, what everybody thinks. Quality is quality, and you need to go for it, and you need to make up for whatever their other problems are and just deal with it. So what do I know? That's what I've done. And it's worked for me.
Well, I think eagles don't flock. And so you find them and you put them in their role and you enable them to go do their job. You don't make them go do their job.
Occasionally they blow because they're so ambitious. But it's worth it.
You manage processes, but you lead people in the best organizations. So looking back, when things were...
That's a great line. Manage processes, but lead people.
Yeah, for sure. So like in the dark days, in those 20 years before you were an overnight success, what kept you going?
My father, I don't know. I guess I'd had so many privileges and protections that I couldn't imagine failure. It was always going to be right around the corner. I always had faith. I just believed in myself. And I was goddamn if my dad was going to be wrong about it. So I think that's it. I couldn't imagine giving up.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's very common with entrepreneurs is it's going to get better next week, next month, next quarter.
Yeah.
I can hang in there.
Coffee mugs. It's a marathon next Tuesday torture test.
I love that.
That's what my staff presented that to me. We're all in the marathon next Tuesday torture test.
Jeff, if we could open your mind and pick out a golden nugget, something you've learned in your path that we don't know, but what would that nugget be?
Oh, I don't know about that. But I'll give you another thing that was critical to my success. About year 12 or something, I hired somebody to come break a yearling horse for me, and because I couldn't do it because I fell off and broke my arm. I was a rider. I jumped 6-foot walls and went roaring over the countryside. Anyway, I got good at it because I was part of my horse passion. But I hired this woman, and she had worked for Hall of Fame trainers. She had been she had second woman jockey in the United States and lied about her age to do it. She had trained horses. She'd done it. She had been on horses since she was 2 years old in the back in a basket on her grandmother's hunting horse, fox hunting. And I hired her to break this horse, and she got interested in what we do, and she started to help us. And that was a turning point, because before that we were like pointy-headed guys doing the difficult right and the basics wrong or half-assed. And she brought us 300 years of developed what there was of real expertise about racehorses. And so then we figured out we had to layer on our technology over that, not try to replace it. And that was a breakthrough. That then things started to soar. So I think there's a nugget. I was so arrogant. I had 3 degrees of hot shit from Harvard, and I was qualified for the Olympics in wrestling, and I was all kinds of shit. And I thought I was hot shit. And I was arrogant, abrasive son of a bitch. And life softened me some. But I learned, you really have to start. You can't ignore what's out there in experience basics. I mean, I'm ignoring pedigree these days, but not based on that. But you have to build on what's there and be humble enough to know that you're going to be adding on, not recreating a lot of stuff.
Well, I think the best teams are comprised of A players with different skills.
Yeah.
And so she brought a skill set to your team that
We didn't
you
have.
didn't have. And so
I look at the altimeter, and she looks out the window to see if we're off the ground.
yeah, that works. Okay, hardest question, last question, hardest question I'll ask you. I'll put you in a time machine. I'm going to send you all the way back to 20-year-old Jeff. And you have 60 seconds to share one thing that you know now that you wish you knew then that would have made things easier, better, faster, smarter. Into the time machine you go. Here's 20-year-old Jeff. What do you tell him?
My God, be patient. It'll be okay. Don't despair.
I love that. I love that. I think be patient is wise words for every entrepreneur. How can someone in the audience reach out to EQB or to you?
Well, there's our website, EQB.fyi, no .com. It's .fyi, like for your information. And you can contact us through that, or my website. My email is just jseder, JSEDER, D as in dog, jseder at EQB.fyi.
Awesome.
And,
reach out through the website or at Jeff's personal email. He'll reply. And Jeff, it's been my distinct pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. That's today's episode of the Proven Entrepreneur Show. We'll see you next time, maybe from the racetrack. Who knows? Thanks.